On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana, and invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Christ.
Please be seated. Grace, mercy, and peace be unto you from God our Father and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. We typically see Jesus performing miracles when he is surrounded by the crowds. When people come to him from miles and miles around just to see Jesus, just to hope that they may have a chance to talk with him, so he could take away their hurt, their pain, or their suffering. But the miracle that we read about today is different. You see, in the village of Cana in Galilee, which was only about 5 miles from Jesus' hometown of Nazareth, the people that Jesus is with are at a wedding. And they know Jesus. They know him apart from his divinity. They know Mary. His invitation was a personal invitation from a friend or family member. No strings attached. The bride and groom did not want anything from Jesus besides his attendance in their celebration of love. So Jesus is at this wedding, sitting at one of the guest tables with his mother and his disciples. And they find out that their friend, the host, runs out of wine. Now this is a big deal because running out of wine early isn't just an inconvenience, it's an actual disaster. Wine was not just a drink. It wasn't just something nice to have during their celebration. Wine was a sign of God's abundance, of God's joy, of God's gladness and hospitality. And when someone runs out of wine during a celebration, especially a marriage feast, perhaps they run out of blessing. Perhaps this wedding was not blessed by God. Mary, Jesus' mother, knows the importance of being connected with God, to feel God's blessings in her life. So she steps in and begins this process of new wine. Not just any new wine, but wine that the whole crowd could have drunk for not just the 3 days during the wedding feast, but probably for about 3 weeks. And this wine was not just your standard wine, but it was good wine. In the changing of the water in those 6 big jars, Jesus is providing close to an additional 1,000 bottles of wine. And that is what grace is. Overflowing joy, blessing, in the presence of God. Now, not everyone knows that Jesus did this miracle. Mary knew, his disciples knew, some of the servants knew. But even Jesus did not know what was going to happen. But it was time for him to take his life and his ministry to the next level. Now, Mary doesn't ask him to do anything specific. She could only guess what he was going to do when she told him to take care of it. But she knew enough to turn to him when there was a need. She knew that trusting Jesus, her son, that something amazing was going to happen. Now, we all have times when we run out of wine. when God's abundance seems so far from us, when we have an issue or a problem that not only affects our life, but the lives of the people around us. When this happens, who do we turn to? The host certainly did not plan to run out of wine. The host might not even have known that the wine actually ran out, but it was Mary who saw the problem, who turned to Jesus to step in and set things right. And not only does Jesus meet the need, he meets it well. He doesn't just provide wine, but he provides the finest wine. This wine is a symbol of the love and grace which we receive from God. This grace which was given to us in our baptism. This is something that cannot be taken away from us. It is God's abundance in our lives. And this is something that is hard to see, because many times we look around our lives and all we see is scarcity. We believe that we don't have enough money or security or power or privilege. We see that things bring us down. And all that we see is that we've run out of wine, that we've run out of opportunities to creating and living our best life. We see this because of the main message in our lives. With this being an election year, we hear again and again all of the candidates tell us how terrible things are, or how terrible things could be if they continue the way they are, or if we make a change. We see it in church. We look around and we see how the church universal is getting smaller and smaller. There are congregations in our synod that are discussing their future, and that future looks like going from a full-time ministry to a part-time ministry. Or other congregations who are discussing from going from a part-time ministry to permanently closing their doors. And when we focus on this scarcity, this leads to fear. And this leads to asking the question, what if? What if I miss an opportunity for success? This means that I have to play the Powerball, right? Because I have 1 in 2 million chance in winning. But there's that chance. What if my child misses something and misses out on an opportunity? Then they might have a terrible future. What if I risk and share my faith with a person in my life, a neighbor, a friend, a coworker? What if they don't receive it the way that I hoped, or the way that I would like? What if? We are so hardwired to pay attention to the scarcity and fear around us that our energy, our creativity, our passion no longer exists. And when we have this hole deep down inside of us, there's this space, a need that we have. And this space is usually filled with brokenness, fear, hate, scarcity. But we have an opportunity to fill it with love and grace. So we come to church and we arrive at church and we need to hear about this hope that we have in our faith. We need to hear about God's abundance, grace, and forgiveness. We have to have something that turns a scarcity into abundance. And that's what we try to create here on a Sunday morning. We carefully craft a service filled with music, prayer, scripture, preaching, fellowship, love, grace, communion, all the things that lead us to hear the message of God's love. A message to fill that emptiness that is deep down inside. When we come to church, and like today, you'll pick up a copy of the budget for 2016. You see that we have yet again another deficit budget. Not only a deficit budget, but we look around and we see all the hopes and dreams for our congregation that cost money. And the amount of the faith commitment, the pledge for 2016 is far less than what we need. We sit in meetings and we say that there is ministry that needs to be done, ministry that we feel God is calling us to do in this world. But also sitting in the back of our minds is something that we don't want to really talk about. The reality that if we continue to run a deficit budget year after year after year after year, we will have the conversation about going from a full-time to a part-time ministry. So what do? Well, first we start with grace. I always love to start with grace. Grace isn't only about making up for something that we lack, but it's also about providing more than we ever imagined that we deserve. Jesus could have provided just enough wine for the party to go on. Given that the people have already been drinking for a day or two, the wine could have been something that would have tasted okay. This would have been enough. But he went beyond expectations, beyond anything that anyone would have imagined that could have happened. Why? Because that's what grace looks like. We can look at our budget. We can look at the other churches in the Gardner area or other churches in our synod. We can look at the churches around the world. We can look just into our own lives and we can see scarcity. We can see areas where we fall short of the glory of God, where we fall short of what we want or what we need. We can look at that and we can be scared or frustrated or discouraged because we don't see enough. We don't see how we can make things right, how we can move forward. Or instead of seeing the lack, we can look at the church, the world, and our lives with abundance and generosity. Instead of looking where we can take away, we can look for ways that we can be generous with our time, energy, money, and motivation. Look at the ways that God is being generous in our own church. Look at the abundance that we have here among us. We now have a monthly meal that we serve to the community, a free meal. And we have faithful volunteers who come and cook during that meal. We collect food for the CAC each week, and bags of food are brought there. We have dedicated volunteers who come and help out at the church in a number of ways, from visiting our homebound to setting up communion every Sunday. We have a growing youth program with a junior youth group that is meeting monthly, and a confirmation class that is going to Calumet for spiritual enrichment. We have a Wednesday night worship service that not only provides an opportunity for prayer, but to be honest, it's been one of the new highlights this year for me, because I am deeply moved every time we gather together. We are a church that is filled with abundance. We have many, many ways that we provide for people in our congregation, people in our community, and people around the world. And when we see this abundance, when we start to move that abundance that's found into the church, into our own lives, what a difference that makes. And it becomes contagious. So when we have conversations with our friends and family and neighbors about the amazing things that God is doing in this place, they might want to check it out themselves. And it is then that we will see our community grow and continue to be strong and continue to do the work that God is calling us to do. You know, I'm very excited for our annual meeting next Sunday. I don't know how many people always say that. But it's an opportunity for our whole congregation to come together and to celebrate the ministry that we have done together this past year. We'll be able to look back together and see the blessings that our community has experienced, the growth, the abundance that's found in our church. And I can't wait to share that with all of you. And then we can look ahead and plan together and say, this is what we think God is calling us to do, and this is how we are going to do it. You know, Jesus' miracle today started with a simple invitation to a wedding feast. And it turned out to be an opportunity to share God's abundance with the people who were at the wedding and into our lives today. May you continue to feel and see and experience God's love, grace, forgiveness, and abundance in your life. Amen.